Hi everyone, welcome back to Java 1 for All. In this video, we are going to talk about the throw, but for checked exceptions. Let's go back to the exception test 01. Let's close all the other tabs. So we saw when working with runtime exceptions that we have the option to throw any kind of exception, runtime or exception or any of the subclasses. And we saw here that's also possible to have throws. It's kind of a flag that the method that it's calling will know some kind of exception is expected or it should be handled in case of subclasses of exception. Now, there is pros and cons of handling exception. For example, the custom file creator that we have here is something that we have in our own code and we are treating the exception ourselves. So this means that whoever is calling this method will not have the chance to handle the exception in their own way. So let's imagine that, for example, the create new file from the Java library is handling this exception. So if we go to create a new file, you will notice that there is no try and catch. And why is that? Can you imagine if they were handling the exception themselves? What would happen? What would we be able to do in case of something happen? So to avoid this problem, it's you have to think about the pros and cons of handling the exception or throwing the exception to whoever is calling. The rule of thumb, it's at least what I usually do in my case. If you have your method private, usually you can treat the exception yourself. Why? Because nobody outside the exception test 01 will have access to the custom file creator. So basically it's a method that you created for yourself. Now, if you have the same method public, it means that anyone in your project, anyone in your team using this project will be able to call the custom file creator. And if they are able to call the custom file creator and you handle the exception, if they want to do something different, for example, we are creating a new file, and if something happens, we are just printing the stack trace. But what happens if someone else would like to email saying, sorry, but there is a problem creating new files in the server. Please check out. You are not giving them that chance. Of course, you could always return Boolean or something else, but handling exceptions is something that you should be careful because sometimes someone is going to have a different view. Sometimes it's a different requirement. So if you handle the exception yourself, you are taking out that option. So let's, I think I said so probably 50 times. So 51. Let's continue here and imagine a different scenario. So let's copy this 52, this class, exception test 01. And let's just duplicate this class. Let's imagine a scenario where we do not want to handle the exception. We can just throw the bomb to someone else, whoever is calling in the stack. So we can 53 or 54, I lost the count, throws IO exception. When I do this, I have two options. I can either leave like this or I can handle myself. So I can just let it throw to someone else. I don't need to handle myself. I'm going to remove this try and this catch and this stack trace and this one. So basically now what is happening is if an exception happens inside the create new file, I'm throwing the exception back to whoever called. And the stack, it's the main method. Now the main method has two options. Either handle this with a try catch or throw to someone else. In this case, there's no one else to catch this exception. So if we throw here, this is going to crash the program. But I don't have to handle that exception for a try catch anymore. So this is one option. So we have the first option that is try catch, and we have the second option that is just throwing the exception to whoever is calling. When you have a private method, doesn't make a lot of sense. If this method was public, yeah, it would make a lot of sense. But there is another option that's kind of a hybrid between handling the exception and throwing IO exception. So let's just roll back everything here. And this is a specific case where sometimes it happens. For example, imagine that you are executing a payment. And usually when you are executing a payment, there's something definitely can go wrong. So either the bank is not working, or somehow the connection or the secrets or the keys, a lot of stuff can happen. But it's important, it's a payment. You don't want to lose that payment, you don't want to lose that client. So what happens? You have your payment being executed. You want to handle that payment. Basically, you have a try catch. You want to do something in the catch. For example, you would like to trigger emails to all the developers at night, or you would like to also just have the stack trace in the console to check the logs later. But you also want to throw that to someone else. Because, for example, in this case here, custom file creator, we are just printing the stack trace. But if this was public, this is something, look, I, the creator of the custom file creator, is handling this exception. I, for myself and for my team, I would like to see in the console if something happens, but I also would like to give you the option of handling your exception, whoever is calling. Basically, I catch my exception and I just throw it back again. So just throw E. Let's go back to runtime exception test 02. Here we are using throw new illegal argument exception. So this happens because we don't have any exception at the moment and we have to create a new object. That's why we have throw new. We are basically instantiating a new object right here. But here at exception test 02, we have the object. If something happens, this object was created by the create new file that happened to not work. And what I'm doing is basically rethrowing this exception. So basically I have here IO exception to catch. I'm going to print my console and then just throw it back. So when you throw it back and it's a checked exception, it's mandatory for you to add throws to the signature. If you don't add the throws to the signature, as you can see here, you have a compilation error. So if you ever throw a checked exception, it's mandatory for you to have it in the throws clause in the signature. So just add to the method signature, and then at least this method is working. But now the custom file creator is not working. So basically you did your job, you caught the exception, you are printing this exception in the console, but you also are giving the option to someone else to handle that exception in their own way. So they can trigger the email provider to send emails to everybody that should be responsible for this piece of code. Now, this is public, and that's basically why we are doing this. Another option is to avoid people having to handle the exception on their own way. You could create your own kind of custom exception, or instead of throwing the same checked exception, you can throw, for example, a new runtime exception. So doing this, I don't have to have this anymore. And why is that? Because I'm catching, the important thing is catch the original IO exception. If I'm catching on line 17, sorry, on line 16, on 17 I'm bringing the stack trace, and then on line 18 I'm throwing a new exception. In this case, we are throwing a runtime exception, and since a runtime exception does not need to be handled, we don't have to add to the throws, but it's an exception anyway. If my main method does not take care of this runtime exception, the program is going to blow. But they are not required to do that anymore because it's not a runtime, it's not a checked exception, it's a runtime exception. So There are several ways to do this, and I think the most important thing is to reach a team decision. This is something that usually, if you have a team already running, they probably decided. If they didn't decide yet, probably you will see several different patterns around the code. Would advise people to keep the pattern and have a decision about how to handle this. So you can have a decision like all the public methods that are handling files, they should reflow the exception, or they should throw a runtime exception after catching the exception, and so on. The most important part is you should take care to have the same pattern, because I think patterns are one of the most important things in programming, because it's easier for everybody to be on the same page. It's easier for new people to join and understand what's happening, and it's just the onboarding time and the maintenance. Everything gets easier when you have a pattern throughout your entire project. Woo! That was a lot of talk for one video, so I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm trying to share all my experiences throughout my life with you. I hope you are enjoying this course. Let's continue in the next video. Bye.